To reintroduce the bloke, this time he's a bit of a romantic traveller. You may remember that he said bye-bye at Bly. Well, he'd set up camp at Tent Hill, had a good wash at Scrub Creek, did the laundry in Launceston, went to the dentist at Drillham, visited the op shop at Retro, and got properly dressed in robe. He went looking for a good sword in Boobarawi, but then he met a gorgeous Sheila in Billaweela. They spent Wednesday on Thursday Island and fell head over heels at Slippery Rocks. Oh, he was a real Romeo in Omeo. And how they swooned in Argoon. But unfortunately they got exposed at Nude Creek, had to get engaged at Ringwood and married in Wedding Mountains. Still, they danced all night at Jigalong, picked flowers at Violet Town, had a rum at Distillery Creek, had a rum at Distillery Creek, had a rum at Distillery Creek, had a rum at Distillery Creek. Party for a week in Never Tire. And were fairly wasted by Fairy Meadow. The bloke was left behind at Laggers Point, got tongue-tied at Mumble Up, gargled his words at Argata, scored no points at nil, and stayed too long in Oolong. Oh, but what could have been at Piggabeen. Still, they had their dreams in Promised Land and reached their zenith at Pinnacle. But somehow they'd run out of patience by perseverance. They were completely lost at Navigators. And he'd lost all his mediation skillo in Tungkillo, but he reckoned he was completely right and no wrong. Unfortunately, it all turned out wrong again at Corong, and they were divorced at Separation Creek. She went her own way at Exeter, and he ran away to retreat. But he was feeling pretty gloomy by the time he got to Boomy, and there was no Oompa at all in Boompa, so he relived the sorrow all the way to Booroo. Still, he was feeling pretty lucky at RC Creek, and he picked up a young friend from Nana Glen. Well, her kitten died in killing me cat, and he realised how old she wasn't by Y Young, so he made the best decision at Sensible Creek and lost her somewhere in Hidden Valley, wondering where she might be tomorrow. The Bloke, Part 3.
It's by a very famous poet called Anon. I once, when I was a student, bought a book of ballads, and it was tucked in amongst that lot, and I thought it was fantastic. And I learnt it then. That was back in about, okay, I won't tell you, but a long time ago. By the sluggish river Gwyder lived a wicked red-backed spider. You got it. And he was just as wicked as could be. And the place that he was camped in was a Rusty Jones's jam tin in a paddock by the showgrounds near Moree. Near him lay a shearer snoring. He'd been on beer and booze and all through the night and all the previous day. And the rooking of the rookers and the noise of showtime sprookers failed to wake him from the trance in which he lay. Now, a dainty little shearer with a slimy looking spieler came along, collecting wood to make a fire. Said the spieler, he's a boozer. He's gonna be a loser. If he isn't, you can christen me a lawyer. Hustle round and kick knit, honey, while I fan the moke for money. With us a little luxuries for tea. She said, no, don't be silly. Go back and boil the billy. You can safely leave the moke to little me. So she circled, ever nearer, closer to that dopey shearer that was lying there, all fast asleep and snug. But she did not see that spider that was ringing close beside her, for her mind was on the money and the mug. Now the spider started dinner. He'd been daily growing thinner. He was fasting and hollow as a drum. As she eyed the bulging pocket, she darted like a rocket and bit that rookin' Sheila on the bum. And the Sheila started squealing. Her clothes she was unpeeling. To hear her cries, would make you feel forlorn. One hand the bike was pressing, and the other was undressing, and she reached the camp the same as she was born. And that shearer, pale and haggard, woke and back to town he staggered, where he caught the train and he gave the booze a rest. And he'll never know that spider that was camped beside the guider had saved him 60 smackers of the best.
Things like that, nobody ever wants to admit it, because this is what happened with the Smiths back in the, when was this one written? I reckon about 1890, thereabouts. This would have appeared in the Bulletin magazine from the golden age of Australian poetry, when Patterson and Lawson and all their ilk were writing poems for the Bulletin every week, and you could read all that stuff in the weekly paper. Where do you see poetry in the newspaper these days? Hey? Well, I reckon we've stepped backwards in some ways. This was written by Dryblower Murphy. It's called The Smiths of Coolgardie. There were many problems set us when Coolgardie was a camp, when the journey to the gold fields meant a coach fare or a tramp. We had water questions, tucker, ditto, also that of gold, how to clothe ourselves in summer and how to dress to dodge the cold. We marvelled how the reefs occurred in most unlikely spots, for that topsy-turvy strata tied the geologist in knots. But though we plumbed the depths of many mysteries and myths, the worst we had to fathom was the prevalence of Smiths. Now, to say they swarmed Coolgardie was to say the very least, for they overran the district like the rabbits in the east. The name predominated in the underlay and drive. The open cut and costume seemed to be with Smiths alive. When the dishes tossed the gravel, they had gathered from afar. They clustered round the two-up school and at the shanty bar. And while Jones and Brown were just as thick as herrings in a frith, if you threw a stone at random, you were sure to hit a Smith. There were Smiths from every region where the Smiths are known to grow. There were cornstalk Smiths, Victorian Smiths, and Smiths who eat the crow. For those of you who don't understand that, those are old Australian state names from many years ago. The cornstalks were New South Wales, the crows of South Australia. So Smiths from every region where the Smiths are known to grow. There were cornstalk Smiths, Victorian Smiths, and Smiths who eat the crow. There were Maori Smiths, Tasmanian Smiths, and parched up Smiths from Cairns. Bachelor Smiths, widower Smiths, and Smiths with wives and bands. Some assumed the name for reasons that to them were known the best, when silently they packed their ports in the middle of the night and flitted to the west, till every second man you met to yarn or argue with was either a legitimate or else a bloody bogus Smith. Well, I suppose it really mattered little till the days the big mails came. But then began the problems with this far too frequent name. You see, the Smiths rolled up in regiments, just like this mob of you here at the post office when the letter S was called. They drove the post officials mad and prematurely bald. Souls of Smiths demanded letters that to them were never sent. Wrong Smiths got correspondence which for them was never meant. And many a Smith, whose facial calm would have shamed Egypt's monolith, bought Jim Jams with the boodle sent to quite a different Smith. Well, the climax came one Christmas Eve. The mail was on its way, and the post officials yearned to somehow block the Smiths on Christmas Day. So, they faked an Eastern telegram, by methods justified. Upon it, put no Christian name and tacked it up outside. It was stamped, prepaid and urgent, so 'twould confidence inspire. And when Coolgardie sighted it, and it was from a Melbourne lawyer and addressed to Smith Esquire, and it was stamped, prepaid and urgent, so it would confidence inspire. And when Coolgardie sighted it and marked its pungent pith, there was pallid consternation in the habitat of Smith. "Our client has informed us you're over in the West," ran the message, "and has threatened your immediate arrest. She hears you're known as Smith, but says you needn't be afraid if you'll come and return to face the music and redeem the promise you made." The population read it, and let me tell you, before daylight came, a swarm of Smiths rolled up their swags and took a different name. They declined to face the music and return to kin and kith, and the maidens who were promised still await the absent Smith. Poem by Drybar and Murphy. Thank you. Are you a poet virgin, Georgie?
Yes, I am.
She is. Oh, lots of virgins this morning. Here you go.
This is a bit of a last minute job, and it's obviously my first time at Palm Creek, so please be kind. There's this open new thing. It's like some fab new toy. There's this new species out from Apple. It's called a teenage boy. Not suitable for children under 23, says Father Speaks Worldwide's latest dad decree. Provided is a manual to translate all the ums. Never hit them in the groin or introduce them to your mums. They're strictly non-refundable, with absolute no warranty. A secure and happy relationship is not a product guarantee. Some are so good looking, but they lack a certain brain. Some will do the dirty and cheat on you again. Most resemble Neanderthals. They only grunt and feel. With others, you must rehinge their jaws when using sex appeal. They won't ever grasp the concept of a hormonal female mind. When that time of month ticks over, they're mysteriously hard to find. Some just use testosterone. You've got to beat them off with sticks. They can't wait to get their hands on you and activate their... Sorry, Mum. Yet somehow they're still worth it. Despite their many flaws, we rely on them, we love them. Why? Few people know the cause. It's because there's one man out there. There's at least one Mr. Right who'll come pining neath your window and calling every night. He will hold you close and whisper in your ear those 3 little words every female wants to hear. What a load of advertising crap.
I can't believe she's a virgin, but that was fantastic.
Introduce the bloke. This time he's a bit of a tragic traveller. Now you may remember that he left his friend in Hidden Valley. Well, he realised that wasn't the nicest thing to do. So he meditated at Mystic Park, planted flowers for her at Geranium. He followed the Bogan Way, but they wouldn't let him through Bogan Gate. And this is a work in progress, so I keep finding new places. In fact, before I go on, is there anybody here from a Townsville suburb, which I discovered on the way here, that's spelled N-O-M-E? Anyone here from that place? There is. So you have a nome to go to. The rest of us don't have a nome to go to. See, that's where you find these things. They're just bloody, they pop up out of the ether. It's just, you know, God directs my car to sort of stop in certain places, and that's what happens. So anyway, he planted flowers for a geranium, followed the Bogan Way, but couldn't get through the Bogan Gate. So he was feeling namby-pamby. He turned around at Amby to look for a park in Parks. He thought he'd find a bargain in Sale. But then he met a salesman in Hawker who turned out to be a prat from Pratton and sold him a small statue at Gnomesville. The bloke tried it out as a voyeur at Peep Hill and almost succeeded at Watcham. But it was a bit tricky near Safety Bay and way too dangerous at Perillup, and it all came undone at Cropper Creek. A bloody car wouldn't start at No Goer. He got badly bitten in Sandfly and made such a big bet at the risk that he was a broken man by Broken Hill, and then lost all his shares at Lostock. He ran completely out of money and broke, and that made him really angry at Killincranky. He was even worse in Berserker. He got into a fight at Skirmish Point and they locked him up at Lockhart River. In fact, he couldn't lie straight in bed at Slippery Hummock, but he did sleep well and snug. Then, the poor old bloke, he lost his glasses at Spectacle Head, and he couldn't see the signs in Seymour. He drove real quick through Rapid Bay and got chased by sirens at wee-woo, wee-woo, wee-woo. He copped a ticket in Speed, hit a cockatoo in Barangaroo, turned a marsupial into a speed hub at Wombat, collided with a kangaroo at Banoo, and then ran over a bunny at Rabbit Flat. He changed the rubber in tyres, but the old car was pretty crook by Tallarook, so he went to the mechanic at Tootal, but he only had one spanner. He got out the oil at Squeaking Point, but I'll tell you, it was all a bit late. The battery went flat at and she finally stalled in stall, leaving him wondering if he'd get anywhere tomorrow. Part 4, still more to come. To reintroduce the bloke. Now, this time, unfortunately, he's a bit of a lost traveller. You may remember that he stalled in stall. Well, you may remember, in fact, that he started this whole thing back in Dareton, and then he stalled in stall. Well, to the best of his knowledge wasn't the best. So he went for a swim at Bobalong and played some ping pong in Bing Bong. When he went along to Binalong, they asked, "Where was you been?" He said, "I've been here." He said, "No, where's your wheelie bin?" He said, "I wheelie bin here." He found out he was the primary male at Alpha, and he knocked down the walls at Jericho. They put a rocket up him at Launching Place, and he showed him how to rock at Rollston and then roll at Rockhampton. But then the bloke had a synapse lapse. He thought he saw Mick Jagger at Rolling Stone. I wonder what he was on. He muttered a bugger at Muddaborough, got pretty smudgy and mudgy, and almost witnessed a travesty at Traveston. He couldn't find Hugh in Hewenden, and then he got stuck too long in Ululong. When he asked about Wye River, they said, "Oh, 'cause it's bigger than a creek." It's true, that's a sign at Wye River in Tasmania. That's it. Right? There's a real travelogue sometimes. So we waited for a wine at Vineyard, had a short walk through Walkerman, went bushwalking at Wandering, bricklaying at Wallup, and did some bloody hard work at Yakka. He lingered too long at Wongalinga and couldn't find out anything about Secret Harbour. But he was busting for the loo at Weelong, but he got it right for Wee Right. He had a gander at Yakandanda, said goodbye to Woombai and yes to Yay, but he turned down a drink at Yellow Water. The bloke, he was dynamite at you and Mike, but he got pretty tired by yawn up. He felt really old at Young, but he was so much younger at Youngaborough that they nicknamed him the Younger Bugger from Youngaborough. Still, it all corroded away by Z-Rust. But he knew where he'd be tomorrow. So the bloke took another gamble, caught the Narooma remover, to take a dare and a dare. But perhaps for the bloke, there would be no tomorrow. That was the bloke. Thank you, folks. I've been Mark Boff. For all of the people who've performed here at the breakfast this morning, especially those young folks who are getting up, they've been wonderful.